morning, sunshine. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Just fantastic.
I'm good now with that fan.
It's Monday morning. Welcome everybody to Youngstown Talk channel. This is, talk radio for our area, and we open that up to the whole nation to listen into what it is that we have to say. And Kelin and I are famous for bringing out the most unpopular of unpopular opinions and talk about, because that's exactly, we need to be desensitized to things we don't like hearing and be able to compartmentalize, not overreact, not get angry, just take it in.
Yeah, I feel like one of our missions is to make grown-ups be grown-ups. You don't have to resort to pouting and name calling and being ridiculous because you heard something you don't like or you don't agree with. And while that concept sounds like it should be common knowledge, it's really not, unfortunately.
And Kelin believes in humanity. I'm the cynic of humanity. And if I felt like the overall trend was we were trying to be better people and whatever, and it's not the case. And so all of the stuff we talk about is horseshit, where we take this this virtue that is sort of like a standard that nobody adheres to, but it's still be used as a weapon against people. So if I was like a thief and then I would get all outraged when I saw someone stealing, it's me who would point out the saying, probably not your best strategy.
Yeah. And I do while I do try to maintain faith in humanity, the internet is showing us that faith is getting harder and harder to come by because.
So did the internet make something inauthentic, or did it just reveal what we authentically are?
Well, probably just revealed it. I don't know. I think maybe a little bit of both, but most likely I think it just revealed it. Because it's
really what it was this whole time.
It's basically like this big spotlight on how crappy people can be and how someone will go out of their way to say something crappy. When in person, maybe they wouldn't have. Everybody talks about the keyboard warriors or beer muscles. I feel confident enough to give you a cut down on the internet because I know if I said it to your face, I'd probably get punched, kind of thing. And now that's just
and that's an important deal where if the pressures against just running your mouth means that you get punched in the face, then the punching in the mouth keeps you from saying the things that you really feel. Would you rather know what people really feel, or would you like them to keep it inside and not reveal it, and then you don't know that's who they really are?
That's a good question.
Because if that's who they are, then the internet just revealed what people are, because it gave them confidence to be able to say things that they should have if they are being authentic. I mean, there's times where I throw some stuff out on the internet that I don't really feel. I do it just because I wanted to lob a grenade in there to see what would happen. That would be an inauthentic.
People up.
Exactly, but that's the funness of the internet. So, and then of course our adversaries can get us riled up by throwing bots in there and saying things that will get you pissed off. So it feels like there are more people that feel that way than they really do. So there's that.
Yeah. And now it's basically a business. We've talked about how anything that is negative or divisive, it's like top of the algorithm. It gets served to everyone. It gets more attention. It gets more traction. That's even kind of why you have those bots or internet trolls that will find a post that has a lot of engagement and say something negative just to get more engagement.
That's exactly
right. They can be influential. They can make money. We're really in a culture now that negativity is rewarded, or it at least will go farther than positivity will. That's kind of sad.
Yeah.
And it's sad that it works.
Today's topic, we're gonna hit, it's not very controversial, but racism. So do we, and I fear that if we go down the path that we're on, we are going to have a race war. And I think everything is leading us to the tribal groups that are, just kind of smoldering, and eventually it's going to break loose. I mean, you saw that with the BLM riots and all that stuff. I mean, it's right under the surface. It's ready to pop off. And we're feeding into that. So I don't know if you saw the chick at the playground.
I heard something
Yeah.
about this, but I didn't read it, so I don't
Okay.
know the details.
So some chick was at the playground, probably late 20s, mom with her 18-month-old kid, year and a half year old kid. Yeah. And there was another kid that was playing at the playground, that black kid that was rifling through their diaper bag, stealing some stuff out of the diaper bag. And she turned around and threw down some not nice words to this 5-year-old kid.
Racial slur words.
Ooh. And there was someone who was at the park that caught it on video and approached her, and she responded, not backing down, and said even more insensitive things and whatever. And she started, obviously they doxed her and, really kind of put her through the ringer. And then she started some kind of fundraising thing and raised like $650,000 to relocate and defend her and whatever. So now, there's a couple of things we can discuss about this. So pick of what you just heard there. What do you want to pick first?
Well, this might be a little outside of what we're going to talk about, so I'll go with this first. The little bit of information about that story I saw was on a Facebook post. Somebody shared the article and said, this is where we're going because of you all. And the person who posted it is very liberal and was posting it blaming anyone who voted for Trump. And to that, I'm like, this is why this is going to keep getting perpetuated. This is why anyone who truly wants to fight racism has an uphill battle, because you take something that is clearly wrong and you make it either a political argument, you blame people that are not involved in not doing it. Like, do you know what I'm saying here? It's like, why would you take something to shine a spotlight on the issue of racism and you made it about something else to push your own agenda?
Well, let's follow. Now, first off, is this racism?
Yes.
Definitionally racism? How is it racism?
Well, I'd have to look more into exactly what happened, but definitionally racism, maybe not.
It's not definitionally racism.
Yeah. Is it rude? Is it mean? Is it condescending? Yes.
Okay.
Is it definitionally racist?
Okay. So as a society, are we trying not to be rude and condescending and saying the meanest thing that can come to your brain? If you scour the internet, you just look for 30 seconds. Is that really the path we're on, is niceness and kindness and whatever? So this is just more of what we get every day. So if I say Trump is a Nazi, that's mean, that's rude, right? And it's condescending. So is that not the same thing? And we're not talking socially, we're talking scientifically. So it's just a word, right?
Yeah.
So racism definitionally would be when you make a decision, right? Or you do something to a race because you think you are superior. You either give a person advantage based on their race, or you give somebody a disadvantage. Stereotypes and having, biases are not racism, but overt actions are racism.
Yeah.
Okay?
So if the mother would have shown up to the playground, taken a look and said, ew, we're not coming to this playground because there's another race here.
Yes, that would be the decision. The decision was made based on race, and you deprived something or changed something or made a decision based on something racial. Now, I will agree what she said was really insensitive and really mean and intended to be hurtful and was the meanest thing that she could think of. And so if everybody was like, all right, let's get off this train. Let's not be mean to people. Let's just have a new thing where we're just going to be nice and kind and we're not going to say mean things. So if she would have come on the playground and says, ooh, look at all these poor people, right? It would have been rude. It would have been insensitive. It would have been condescending, all the same things that she said. So she picked a word, right, that has attachment, but that's a different discussion, whether or not this was a racist action.
Yeah.
But the things that were connected to it, the people who are now giving her money, right? What are they cheering on? What part of that whole thing are they cheering on? Why are they supporting her?
Well, I would think they would support her because, again, maybe they see it as it's not nice what she said, but is it an example of racism? If they're like, no, then they could be like, we're so sick of calling out racism for everything. If she would have looked at the same kid and said, get out of here, you little jerk. Stop, you little whatever. Any other word, would she have been called a racist?
Okay, so I'm keep flowing this into the other topic because we're going to get back to Trump eventually when you see how this thing plays out. So, why now are people saying I'm fed up with it?
I think, honestly, people, one way I could see Trump connected to everything is people saw somebody, a figurehead, out loud say that they are fed up with it, and it led other people to finally be like, I've been fed up too, but I felt like I couldn't say anything or else I'd be called a racist.
Okay, so you go back 2 years, and being labeled a racist would have been career ending because every institution, societally, all across the board, if they tagged you with it, you were done for. And so if you said something, you really walked a fine line and made sure that you never said anything that even could be taken racist, because there was an incredible amount of power with throwing that word at you. Okay. And you know, the whole discussion is power play. It's power dynamics within society. And that's why I wish that institutions like what's up on the Hill over there, the people who study this stuff could really give the rest of us good data, good scientific data. But instead, they start with theorems and they support their theorems. They're just activists rather than people who are looking into it to find out how to make society better. They want to lecture you about things that they're passionate about, rather than giving you good data about how to fix things and be better at arguing and compromising and taking situations like this and using the pragmatic approach about what does it mean to us culturally.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this was something that was just used by a certain side to push a point.
Right.
I think it's not probably the first time a grown-up has said something derogatory to a kid. It's not the first time there's been a playground issue. It may not even be the first time that particular woman has used that word. But it was used, it was caught, and so it was used as a way to push a narrative from one side. Okay,
so now, usually, like I said a couple years ago, that would have been game ending. She wouldn't have got a GoFundMe going or whatever she used. She would have been like ostracized by everyone. But now you see this bubbling up. Now, so the race hustlers, the Jesse Jacksons and the Al Sharptons and all of those people are going to come to the surface, right? And they're going to make their money. They're going to do their grift like they normally do by using this and casting this as a racial issue because of the word that was used. So strategy-wise, right, this girl's done for. Like, that GoFundMe is going to get killed. She's never going to get a dime of any of that money because the pressure that they're going to put to make sure that behavior isn't rewarded is immense.
Yeah, that behavior. It doesn't even matter what word she used. I got to see the video, but depending on how harshly she spoke to a child, that's not okay, regardless of who the child was or what she said. But yeah.
Well, another GoFundMe, the dude who stabbed the white kid.
Yeah.
They did a GoFundMe and they raised a bunch of money for that. So that is being sort of like the checkmate putting in play between these two issues, where if you're going to take a thing and make it racial, and you're going to take a thing that make it racial, either we're going to uniformly put these bad behaviors and not make them give a benefit. Like bad behavior, we just rewarded it with lots of money, where someone bought a new house and this lady's obviously going to get $1 million. So what's going to stop the next person from saying, it's payday time, I'm going to go down to the park, I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to get paid?
Yeah. That's why they had to put warning labels on hot coffee, because someone is like, is coffee hot? Yes.
Oh! Exactly.
I can get paid. Oh, yeah. What's Joe say? Joe.
Maybe her choice of words were wrong, but she has the right to defend herself and let that child know what was doing was wrong.
Yeah.
And, freedom of speech. I mean, it's a rough one because people are going to say what, they're going to say.
Yeah.
And, I think the response, like who's condemning and who's condoning that kind of behavior. So most of the stuff that I read, it was about equal. I hate the fact that she used the words that she did because it was, like I said, it was there. If you're going to express yourself, there are much better ways to express yourself.
Yeah.
A kid, I picture myself at that playground, and what's the probabilities of me using those words in that way? Zero, zero. Now, could I be mad that someone was rifling through my diaper bag? Yeah, but it was a little punk kid. It was not an adult. They probably were misbehaving, but corrective action doesn't have to be that.
Now, if the woman didn't yell at the kid, but she found the parents and said the same thing to them, same situation or different at all?
I don't think it's any different. I think we're talking on two different levels. The someone being mad and doing everything up to violence, everything that she did was legal, versus how to handle yourself in a confrontational conflict deal. I disagree with most everybody in how they manage and handle conflict. So yes, a reasonable person would have walked up to the parents and said, "Excuse me, your child just rifled through my bag. Can you correct it?" Right?
Yeah.
All right. That would have been the best strategy. But we're talking about people who do not know how to resolve conflict. And when I look at the landscape, nobody is. So I'm not surprised when somebody mismanages the way they handle things.
Yeah, because it is so interesting. If you think about it, if this woman had said anything else, and it could be equally as horrible, she might still be accused of being a bad person.
Yes.
But not a racist.
Well, she's not. It's not a racist thing. Yeah. She may be a racist, but what she did was not racist. Thing. Yeah. So I'm guided by principles. So when something happens that shouldn't happen, I go through and find out how do I engineer it so it doesn't happen. So societally, we're like, yeah, you know what? We over leverage the racist deal. We throw it around too much. I'm sure there are people out there. Let's bring them in and convert them into not being racist by not having a structure of racism. But if all we do is racist things, when we spent the last 10 years with DEI and getting institutions to treat one race differently than another, we created institutional racism in the fight to fight institutional racism.
Yeah.
Like, what were we thinking? This is what that buys you. And if we want to say, okay, everybody just be colorblind. Don't treat anybody any different. There's no rules that apply to anybody different. We're going to just hit the reset button, and everything is just going to be equal. And we're going to collectively call everything out that has an unfairness to it. So, because people really don't care. Let's just say you're in a line with people, and somebody cuts the line, and they're allowed to do it. What is your feeling?
It's not good.
Okay, how do you feel then?
Feels unfair.
Okay, do you want to go
slighted? Do
you want to go grab that person and put them at the back of the line? Do you want somebody in authority to come along and say, no, you got to go?
Yeah, somebody teach them the proper way to act.
Yeah, what is the proper way to act? It's to wait in freaking line. Mm-hmm. And all of your sob story and all of your victimization and all the reasons why you don't want to be at the end of the line, I don't care. Right?
Yeah.
You had an advantage. You got there early. You got in line earlier. Right?
Yeah.
I didn't. I'm further back than you. And all the words that come out of my mouth isn't going to change the rules governing the line, which is you can have anything you want as long as you don't deprive someone else of something they want. Right?
Yeah.
So if there was a line for cupcakes and there was a line for fruit, but there's no line for fruit, and you walked up and got fruit, there would be nobody in the cupcake line that would be upset at you.
Yeah.
Why? Because you didn't deprive them of cupcakes. You got something sooner than they did, but it was a different thing, right?
Yeah.
And so the rules that govern it, everybody who's in the line that gets passed over in the line they're not going to accept your reasons. It's going to bubble over until everybody's in line like, well, I'm not going to follow the rules either, because following the rules doesn't benefit. Breaking the rules benefits, and I don't want to do the thing. So that's why I said the racial thing bubbles over. Is people are seeing the effects of the unfairness, and all the justifications worked for like 10 seconds, and now you overplayed that whole make things all things equal or equity, and it's not fair to the people who follow the rules.
Yeah, so if somebody were waiting in line for the cupcakes and someone else comes and cuts them, and let's say that someone else happens to be a different race than the person they just cut. If the person they just cut was like, you're inconsiderate, you're being selfish. Hey, how about a little self-aware here, buddy? Read the room. You're being a jerk. This isn't fair. Not racist, not racist, not racist, not racist. But when they feel the same way, and instead of saying all those things, they express themselves poorly and say, hey, you're a whatever racial slur. Is that person a racist? Are they any different than if they were to say, hey, you're being selfish and inconsiderate and you're wrong? Are they more racist if they don't say those than they say
it wouldn't be racist at all. Okay. It would be the meanest thing that you could think of in the moment to be mean. Right. Yeah. And it had the word
You're trying to hurt them.
Yeah. So if from a scientific standpoint, it has to check boxes in order to be racist. Can you say something that a racist would say? Yes. Without it being racist? Yes.
Yeah. Maybe all racists might say this thing.
Yes.
But not everyone who says this thing is racist.
Right. Yeah. You would have to check those boxes so it doesn't automatically. And what makes it worse is that anytime that you're put in a position where you didn't get your way, you used a power that you have, which is that racist card, to use that to trump everything. Yeah. And when you do that often enough, you diminish what that thing means. So if someone was actually being racist, when you throw that card down, everybody pays attention, and now everybody is on your side. But when you throw it down, like just a couple examples happen. Have you ever been called a racist before?
I don't think so. I'm probably online for something. I don't know.
Okay, there's two examples in the last month or so that I came across, and there was and these are young children, right? Who should not even know what that means, which means at home they are absorbing the victimhood from their parents. Yeah. And so there was one instance where, and I really can't reveal a whole lot because it's not my example and I don't want to, put anybody out on the line. But there was a little kid who was reprimanded for doing a thing. And the response to the kid being reprimanded was, I got in trouble because I'm black. And it couldn't have been further from the truth. Yeah. But because that was the power play at the moment, that was the one weapon that kid had to go to. And white people and anybody who's non-black have a really hard time of saying, no, it's not. And these switches flip in your brain where you're like, oh my goodness, that was the mother of all bombs that was just thrown at me. How do I defend against this? And most people would just go and shy away then from the reprimand, thinking that they just maneuvered one over you. And that is so painful to society, right? When number one, something that needs to carry some weight is devalued by its overuse every time you get yourself in a bind.
Yeah, like when I saw the person share this article on Facebook, if they had not put anything down as far as comments on it that were politically charged, I think everybody could have watched that and went, whoa, lady, that's not okay. Come on, it's a kid. We would have all been in agreement. But because you chose to push your own agenda with this, I didn't even read it. That's how I'm like, well, I know something about it, but I just went, you lost me. You lost me. I now don't even care. So this injustice you think you're fighting, you just lost because you alienated everyone that might have been in agreement with you.
That's exactly right. That's the downside to it. And if you overplay it, then you don't have any allies or friends. So let's just say black kid's going through a small town, right? And it gets pulled over. He has choices. He has to say, I was doing a wrong thing. right? And I'm just going to take my lumps like everybody else. Or I was identified as a black kid going through this town and they targeted me and I got the ticket only because I'm black. Each one of those is going to carry an attitude through that's going to either make this thing go super quick, get your ticket and move on, or it's going to be a thing where it's probably going to worsen because of what was put in your brain. So who's at fault? The person for thinking that they're a victim when everybody has basically told them that they were a victim, even if true, right?
Yeah.
Still, if every black kid thinks that he's going to get pulled over only because he's black, you've just ruined every police interaction till the end of time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like sometimes I feel like the people that are maybe extra sensitive to the idea of racism and systemic racism are sort of keeping it going.
The hustlers.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a lot of money and power.
Let me teach my children that they are probably going to be oppressed. Let me teach my grandchildren they are probably going to be oppressed. Let me teach everyone I know, hey, this oppression is a thing. And just by the way you look, you're under it. And now they grow up to that, when it was like they may have never experienced that their whole life without you telling them they were going to.
But you cannot blame when something is effective as a strategy that you use it. So if it works, why would you not use it?
Yeah.
If you can get out of trouble using a term, if you can hurt an enemy using the term, is there anybody noble enough that's going to keep that card in their back pocket and not play it when they need to? Again, until it doesn't work anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I keep saying when it comes to the Democrats versus the Republicans. The Democrats very much use emotion to get their point across, to convey or persuade people. Very much so. To the point that I think it has started to backfire. And now it's almost like you have cried wolf one too many times that it's starting to not work anymore. And I think that's why they lost this last election. It's probably why they might lose again. It's like you can't even get everyone on board with what is right and what is wrong because you made everything wrong for so long.
Right. And then you can only take that so long. So there's a bunch of people like this white lady at the park that bubble over and say, F it. You can't win if you do. You can't win if you don't. So I'm just going to, it's probably not going to be your intellectual giants who are the first to emerge into this deal of I don't care.
Yeah.
And I wish that racial leaders and people who study societies, right, really do the right thing and say, time out, like, let's recalibrate this thing. Because if we don't, you have a whole segment of the population who are 100% convinced. Like if I was having this discussion with someone that was in that victim mindset, right? Everything I'm telling them would resonate zero.
Yeah.
Because they're ultra convinced by everyone above them on that hierarchy.
And in the meantime, you who claim to be fighting some injustice are making the injustice. Because I feel like everybody could have agreed this woman was wrong. And now at least half of the people, I'm sure, either think she was not wrong or don't care enough to look into it. So you just ruined any chance you
An opportunity.
Yeah.
A total opportunity to show the public and show everybody else what good behavior looks like.
Yeah.
Good behavior is bad things are going to happen. And the way we respond to it is that we teach everyone how next time, how she should have behaved. We could have used an example. But now you just have everybody more entrenched in their own tribe. And the next time around, it's another pop-off.
How do you feel about, well, let me address this first. Sam says, we need to stop using the term racist to label every injustice. That happens to you as a person.
It's funny. There was, this kind of like is a off the mark example, but it lends itself into the psychology of human beings. So there was in technology, there was this thing that happens, and I can't even remember what it was, but the thing that happens so rarely that in my whole career, I've seen it one time, right? And it was troubleshooting something, and it got down to it, and it was this really, really obscure thing that happened. And so I came back and told all of my employees about it. I taught, because you're never going to see this thing again. It was so random, but here's what it does and here's what it is. You want to bet for the next month, any hard to explain item, I must have heard that thing that I've only seen once in my lifetime was used to explain about 50 different things. And I'm like, no.
It's not what it is.
But it became sort of the default. When I don't know what it is, it must be this thing. And I watch something, like I said, not something be the explainer. So that's what human beings do.
Yeah, you know where I'm seeing that a lot is with the term narcissist. Everybody's a narcissist now. Everybody has narcissistic tendencies. I've heard that, like, I don't know. I feel like actual clinicians think a true narcissist is like 1% of the population or something like that. But now it's anybody who is like self-serving or selfish or insensitive or anything. You're now a narcissist. And it's like, but they're probably not.
So if you don't know what it is, you pick a word you learned recently. And you know how I blame for this? Alanis Morissette.
Really?
That Alanis Morissette annoyed me more than any other person culturally, right? Because she came up with a song, Isn't It Ironic? And there were very few ironies in that song.
Not ironic.
She taught a bunch of people who think they know what ironies are, when there are just simple conclusion or causalities, are not ironies. And it pissed me off so bad. So,
all right. If you were afraid to fly your whole life, you finally bought a plane ticket and your plane crashed. Is that ironic?
It's not ironic.
Oh, that was one of them. Yeah.
So anyway,
not ironic.
So picking that favorite word, gaslighting's another one. Like, everything's gaslighting.
Quit gaslighting me.
But the connection is, and that's what I'm saying, like a lot of non-mental giants, they jump into something, and when they don't understand it, they go to the word that works for them. And then other people are like, oh, pretty smart. That's racist. Probably racism. Oh, that's irony. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Oh, toxic. You don't like something, it must be toxic. What a toxic work environment where I'm held to accountability. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. Julie. Hi, Julie. Do you think that that woman didn't know very well what she was saying? She was intentionally cruel. She shouldn't be rewarded. Agreed.
100%.
Agreed. We agree. Intentionally cruel, should not be rewarded, was not okay behavior.
I
but
think
also not racist.
I think,
just
but
a jerk.
Principled, I don't think any cruel people should be rewarded. And I see tons of cruel people being rewarded. So if the takeaway is that we should not reward cruel people, totally on board. Thank you, Julie, for being reasonable.
If the woman would have shown up and said, ew, look at this race that's here. I don't want to be ill. I don't want to be on the same playground as that race. I am better than them. Then the whole world would have said, you are a disgusting racist. What can we do to make sure people don't think this way anymore? This is wrong. But because we called racism in a situation that was not actually racism, just cruelty, we now hurt the case for the actual situation in which there is racism.
Yep. And going forward into the future, all of those arguments will be wounded because we abused.
Yeah. Yep. Carter says, Michelle Obama is one of the biggest abusers of using the race card on everything Trump does.
I can't disagree. And honestly, I think abusing that word from anyone should be admonished as much as this. That should be the takeaway. Anytime someone does it, if they benefit from using it, it's wrong.
I heard an example, and I can't remember the details because it was a while ago. You might know. Was it Mar-a-Lago or somewhere? There used to be a rule in this area. I think they said it was Mar-a-Lago. It was whites only.
Yeah. And
Trump changed that. Trump actually came in and it was whites only were allowed to build and live in this area. And Trump's like, no, this isn't right. And he started allowing African Americans to come and live and build in that area. But he's a racist, right? Like, he just literally changed something that was actually racist, but he is the racist.
He's a terrible racist if that's the case.
Yeah. And that's like, when you hear things like that, it makes it very difficult then to give you any credibility when you want to call them racist. Just like if you call someone a Nazi and you're like, oh, well, here are some examples where they directly spoke out against Nazis and they did something that is literally the opposite of something a Nazi would do, but they did something you don't like in another situation, and now they're suddenly a Nazi. So then you lose all credibility.
And people are wising up because the strategy was overplayed. So let's roll out a couple of hypotheticals, okay? And you'll see how they kind of connect in. So let's just say your family lived in a property out in rural Youngstown, right?
Yeah.
And somebody came up to you and said, hey, in 1870, this plot of land back here used to be my grandfather's. And right now you're living on a place that my grandfather was unjustly outmaneuvered on this property. Okay. Now, do you then, you didn't do it.
I didn't do it.
You had no idea, but you have it.
Yeah.
And you've been pointed out that in history, there was an injustice for your family. So what's your obligation now? What do you have to do?
What do I have to do?
What do you have to do?
Nothing.
You don't have to do anything. Wasn't you.
Yeah. It wasn't
you have the
me.
property
I had
by
nothing to do with it. The property, I bought it. It's in my name. I don't even know if you're telling the truth. I'd have to at least look into it.
Would you feel bad if it were true? And then you went to the library and looked by and you saw that your great-great-grandfather, right, outmaneuvered someone and stole that little parcel in the back from them. And you're like, oh, they've got a freaking grievance. Like, it was stolen, and years of probably getting so super angry that your family took their land.
I sympathize with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then
it would probably depend. Do I really want the land? Do I care to give it up? Does it mean more to them than me? Do they maybe have a good idea of what they're going to use it for and I'm not using it?
So you'd be open to being able to write it if it was no consequence to you. If you didn't need the land, you might give it to them. If you needed the land, you would hold your ground?
Maybe. I might. If I needed it and I bought it and this was something that was like decades ago, I'd be like, look, I don't know what happened back then and what the deal was, but here's what happened now. Do you want to buy it from me?
Okay. So let's reverse it now. Let's just say you found out that a couple of your neighbors a couple hundred years ago swindled your grandfather out of a company and then built it up, and it was worth billions of dollars right now. And you know that your family's entire legacy was put into that business, and it was unjustly taken from your family. Do you feel like you deserve a piece of what it became?
First gut reaction is, that really sucks, Grandpa. That sucks. Because we could have had this, and we don't.
Would you take some legal action and prove that there was injustice done and try to get what was due to you?
Probably not. Would you?
If the way that I see things is that every family and every person has previous injustices that need to be resolved in the moment. Yeah. And there's historically no way to get the injustice because you end up perpetuating the penalty on something who wasn't part of the decision making. Yeah. Even if now you work in a business that came from that injustice, like, what do you personally owe? Like, there's a part of your being that wants to, make it a little bit easier on a person that you obviously agree there was a wrong, but you would want to go back to the people who perpetrated it, and they're not even alive anymore. So there's no way to make real justice happen.
Yeah, that's kind of why I'm like, I would probably think, wow, that sucks. Had that not happened to the grandparents, I might have this. But it did. Sucks for me. And it's like, then where would it end? if I find out that the land I have could have been yours, I better give it back. And maybe this job I had could have been someone else's, but they were passed over. I better give them that. And maybe this could have been like, when does it end?
Now,
Could have been, wasn't.
But you then have a neighbor that will always see you as an evil family that took part of their land. And I know part of you would try to make some concessions to try to make it right on your own terms and negotiate if you can do it. I can see you doing that.
Yeah.
Now, what if me, right? I'm the mayor of the town, and I come to Kelin and say, Kelin, I look through the history books, and your property was taken unjustly a couple hundred years ago. I am commandeering that part of the land, and I'm giving it back to them. Because your family effed up, and I'm going to make it right.
That's not okay.
All right, now you're mad at me.
I feel some kind of way. Yeah.
All right, what do you feel?
Yeah, I would be like, that's not fair. That again was their issue to deal with in their time. This is how it ended up. I have nothing to do with that. I paid for this. I own this now. It's mine. Whether you thought that deal was good or not, I do. So yeah, I guess there's a difference when I'm either
a third party comes in and starts like coming in and telling you what it is that you're going to do based on what they think should happen. Feels.
It's different if I'm dealing with the person, I'm sympathizing with them, I'm seeing maybe what can be worked out versus third party stepped in, inserted.
Well,
that.
The fourth party now would look at that and say, well, you're feeling like an injustice is happening to you by someone taking your stuff and giving it back to them, now writes the injustice that they felt historically when they felt it. So now you both get to feel that injustice.
Yeah.
Now are things equal?
What happens when my kin comes and says, my family member bought this, the state came in and took it, that's an injustice, we want it back? When does it end?
So what we're getting at here is that when you pursue this, when you try to make there's nothing equal. So when you try to get the homeostasis is that all things are equal, right?
Yeah.
If you hit the reset button and ignore everything that happened prior. So if you use bloodletting as your evidence for heart surgery, right?
Yeah.
Historically, bloodletting was not a smart thing, but at the time, it was what was happening. So you can look at it as historical reference to learn from it and try not to repeat those things and become better the next time. But moving something that was not great from the past and moving it into the present doesn't make this, it just perpetuates the worstness into what's happening now.
And that is kind of why we were talking the one day, it might have been with Julie, about Elon Musk being a Nazi. And everyone's like, well, he went and told all these people in Germany not to feel guilty. And this was why. He was like, look, the history here is awful, awful. So when do you all get to come out from under that? When is it not on you that your great whatever did something terrible? Like, we need to just move forward, acknowledge something awful happened. It's not okay. But if you all didn't do this, your children had nothing to do with it. Their children had nothing to do with it. So when do we get over this shame and continue to move on and be productive? Is what I think Musk was saying to those people.
But this isn't human nature. Women are very good at this. Well, they will take a leverage item that happened and they will reference that leverage item forever, right, as a strategy because it's effective. You remember that one time you did X, and because it's effective, they will always use it until it's not effective anymore, and they'll move on. Let me read some. I get a sense you're disagreeing with that. It's like when he's sexist and goes and hires a bunch of women. Yeah. Personal responsibility needs to be enforced regardless of somebody's race, religion, creed, or sexual identification. That is part of the problem. People are being allowed to make mistakes and they blame their mistakes on those things. For instance, this case, yes, the woman said the wrong thing, but is anybody talking about the child searching through the woman's bag or his actions being excused because of the color of his skin? And then Julie said, Trump recently rescinded the prohibitions against segregated facilities for government contracts like restaurants, waiting rooms, a 60-year-old executive order by President Johnson. I call that act as racist. Didn't hear about that. Prohibitions against segregation.
Prohibitions against segregated.
I'll have to look at that because that does not sound like
for government contracts.
But that's the thing. Like when you look through the prism of racism, then you're digging for things that have some kind of racist tie to it.
Yeah, I'd like to look into that because a lot of people are saying, when he did this whole executive order when it comes to discipline in the education system. And everyone's like, oh, he took away an order that made it so we didn't punish one race over the other. Okay, someone might say, well, that's a good order. We shouldn't punish one race over the other. Well, what it actually did is make it so that you can't punish someone, period. If, in fact, there is a classroom that is just divided up as more of one race than another, and there is a handful of kids that are being, that are acting up, they're being bad, whatever, you can't do anything because there's more of them in the classroom. And that's not fair. That's ridiculous. But it's bundled in this nice little way of wording it that makes it seem racist if you rescind it. So I would be interested in seeing exactly what the government contract stated, that maybe he saw sort of the same unfairness in it or the racist undertones.
Well, all of this stuff that has sort of that that equity built into it, when you unravel it, the headline is going to be because there's going to be a benefit there. Like everybody's going to agree that if there's somebody that, if you have a town that only pulls over black people, then we're going to jump in and make a rule, right? And everybody's going to agree, yeah, that absolutely black people should not be targeted when they drive through a town to be pulled over.
Yeah.
But when you, if there's 5 other things that aren't part of that get unraveled, when you pull that out, the headline's going to be Trump wants to pull over black people, right?
Yeah.
Because these are hammers looking for a nail, looking for something that supports the accusation that he's a Nazi and a racist and whatever. So just waiting for him to do something to make that claim.
Yeah. If you lived in a city that was predominantly a certain race, there was definitely a majority of one race. So the majority of the people getting pulled over were of that race. Would you then want to say, well, too much. You got to stop pulling over that race? Why? I'm not going to make my town safer because the majority of the ones here, like mathematically, they're going to get pulled over more because they are the majority of the town. So you can't say, stop doing that and then think, okay, well, sorry, I'd like to ticket you. I'd like to give you detention. I'd like to do whatever the disciplinary action is, but I can't because, I've met my quota. Too many of that race right now. That's ridiculous.
So how do you change these? And we are not going to solve this problem. I can guarantee you. But we can talk about it in a way that, we can be honest about it. Like we're not an activist on any side whatsoever. We're just scientifically looking at the data.
People think.
So do you think that the black kid in my example, do you think black kids get pulled over more than white kids?
I honestly don't know.
Do you think black kids commit more crimes, more murders?
I have heard, I haven't looked myself. I have heard statistically, yes.
Okay. And so incarceration, do you think black people are put in prison and jails more often than white people?
I don't know. I've heard that there's more crime in that community, so possibly.
Okay. So I would agree with all of that.
Yeah.
I think that does happen, and that's the origin of finding out why.
Yeah.
And if you had, again, up the hill, I would pick on YSU, and they're an analog for all universities because they have entire departments that could dig through this and say, objectively, why does that happen? And then when you lay out the profile of what makes somebody more susceptible, more probable of falling victim to something, and let's say if my hypothesis is that it's all racism, then I don't have to study anything. I'm going to say, oh, black kid get pulled over, it's racism. And then that's the lazy way out, because then you can't turn around and teach society how to not let the thing you don't want to happen. All right. You can put out sort of like a cheat sheet on, if you don't want the thing to happen, here's what you do. And then when people will read it, and if they're like, all right, I'm not allowed to just go to the racism thing, I've got to follow these things. And then scientifically we'll figure out if those things work to make the thing you don't want to happen happens. And a society can't just go around and say every bad thing happens to a black kid is obviously racism. And then white people are like, I got to go with it. Like, I don't have science and I don't have data, and it would be pretty racist for me to challenge that. Let's just let it go and let that fester.
If you are a female and you're walking with your female friends at night, and you are in a city or urban area that is predominantly one race, and you are told, in general, that area, any area, that race is typically, statistically, most likely imprisoned, pulled over, part of crimes, whatever. If you're a female walking in that area at night and you feel scared, are you racist?
No, not at all.
I don't think so either. But I feel like that, I just remember when you said, have you ever been called racist? Any situation in which I think I was almost racist was I'm a female, I am alone. Maybe there was a man there of another race in a sketchy area, and I didn't do anything, I didn't say anything, but I felt nervous. And somebody's like, why? Are you racist? I don't think so.
Okay, change it from the race thing, and you're walking down the street by yourself.
Yeah.
And you're wearing a meat suit, right?
Yeah.
And on your sidewalk, there is a German Shepherd that is scouring trash cans for food. If you decide not to walk past the German Shepherd, are you doggist, right? Or are you weighing probabilities or possibilities? And one side of the sidewalk had a 1% chance of the German Shepherd eating your meat suit, and the other sidewalk had a 0%, and you chose the higher probability of safety of not getting eaten by the German Shepherd, right?
Yeah.
Regardless if you could have walked right by and the German Shepherd was content going through the trash can, and it would have never in a million years tried to eat your meat suit. Even if you weren't wearing a meat suit, it wouldn't have taken your leg off. But still, your brain knows how to pick instances of risk and what you are comfortable. You're allowed to choose whatever risk profile you want. If you want to be a rebel and walk past the German Shepherd and flex at him, so be it.
Yeah.
Right?
And I have like a very real example of this. And somebody said this to me and I went, oh my God. Could that have been some ingrained racism in me? I was closing up at work one night alone by myself. Closing time. Man walks in last minute. And I said, all right, I'll be nice. Go ahead. I'll take one more customer today. Come on in. Started saying like flirtatious things to me. And I was like, all right, just going to move past that. Not really comfortable. I'm alone here. All right, I need your phone number for this project we're going to help you with. Doesn't know the phone number. Doesn't know how to give it to me. What do you mean? What's the area code? Didn't know what an area code was. Very, very shady again. Okay, can I get some more information from you? Again, very well known. Any person that came into a business would know this info. And he didn't know that either. And now I'm like, I instantly want out of this situation.
Yeah, you felt the risk.
Everything feels wrong about this.
Mm-hmm.
And I told somebody, and they're like, oh, why? Because of the color of their skin? Is that why you were scared? Not at all. But I don't know. Am I racist for feeling scared in that moment?
No. Again,
I don't think so.
doesn't
either.
check either racist box at all. Now, but you can make the argument that if you have cultural stereotypes that have been programmed into you, then you might weigh the stereotype when it doesn't have any truthfulness to it. All right. So such as you're a blonde and culturally stereotyped as a blonde. So if I would judge you based on something that you're not, right, then am I blondest? If I chose to use something that you didn't present to me, I brought that thing to the table. Because there are certain things like, physical attributes, immutable characteristics, things that you can't control. And then you have like, I could do and say certain things that will make you feel differently about me, right? Those are things that I participate in. I give you information and you collect those informations and you get to decide what you do and what you don't do. And I have no say in it. So it's up to me to market to you. So I'm a short guy, right? And culturally, short people are treated differently than tall people, right? It's something I can't control. I mean, I can wear my shoes that make me 3 inches taller, and I could carry a big ego around with me to try to offset little man syndrome, right? But it's up to me then to know where my shortcomings are, the things that I can't control. I know the world doesn't feel a certain way about me, and I have to overcome that in different areas. Now, I could be mad at the world and say that it's not fair to short people, that they're treated as such, and just make you be shamed if you ever brought something to the table where you judge me based on something I couldn't control. Or I can know that I can build that into my sauce. The insecurities that I have are mine, right? And how you feel about me, I can't control. And it's up to me to rise above and not be a victim.
Yeah. How do you feel about, and Julie sort of made me think of this, there are still sundown towns, especially in the South. Racism is alive and well. And then Jeff says racism works both ways.
Yes.
How do you feel about when an organization is started to solely be either a representation of, or basically their whole existence is about a race? For example, I saw this down south, and I'm sure it's not just down south. It's probably up north. It's probably everywhere. Chambers of commerce. I saw some that were just Black chambers of commerce. And I've worked for a chamber before, and the person I was working for reached out to them and said, why don't we just all work together? Why don't we just all help business? Like, why do we have to have one that's just a Black chamber of commerce and then another one? And how do you feel about things like that are like the African-American whatever, and it is the same kind of business as one that already exists?
It's not racism. If I started the Hungarian business owners, and maybe we're unrepresented here, so I bring all the Hungarians together and we deal within each other, help us out as an ethnic group to be more prosperous. And we don't think we're better than all race. We're giving ourselves an internal advantage, and then you can choose to deal with me or not. So long that I didn't use my ethnic group to disadvantage someone else, right? If I only, again, that's the fruit versus the cupcake thing. So long that I don't use my power then to dominate another group, which would be depriving someone else of what they want, then all I'm doing is creating a power dynamic within that group. Same thing, the YWCA. If women want to get together and exercise as a group, they have benefits of being together as long as they don't deprive someone else of something else. I don't care if like things get together. Does it help societally? Absolutely not. What we're seeing in culture is these tribes that get created cannot go from just a noble group of like-minded people who are trying to do it. Once they consolidate power, now they wield it against other people, and that's where they break it. But that's human nature, is that once you know that you've got that power dynamic, it is really hard not to abuse it and use it, and human beings will do that every time.
So if you've got an organization that is either a specific race or a specific heritage, and they maybe give grants only to that same race or heritage or whatever, you would say, is that still okay?
Yeah. If Hungarians are giving it to the Hungarian groups that give it to Hungarian groups, I don't care, right? Because it's just a one group helping each other out. It's only when it's leveraged to hurt other people or take advantage of other people, that's where they cross the line of the tribalists and the oppressiveness and an injustice.
So would you say it's okay for a group of people to start the Caucasian whatever? And it was the same thing, but it was Caucasian people. Does that rub you the wrong way?
No, not at all. It's been happening forever that groups get together, and so long they don't cross the oppressive barrier once they get power, right? Mm-hmm. And every group does it. I'm talking religions, I'm talking ethnic groups, I'm talking gender groups. All of them will get to a certain point, know that they have a power, and they will abuse that power against other groups. And as long as we know that going into it, my mission statement for the Hungarian group would be, we are here to help ourselves. We are not here to deprive other people or hurt other people. And the minute that we check the box of hurting someone else, we've gone too far.
So what would be an example of hurting someone else?
So if I had power and all of a sudden the Hungarian group grew to 1,000 people, and now we could start to deprive you as what are you, Irish,
German.
So now I think, oh, look at all these Hungarians. We are better than the Irish. And look at all this business that the Irish have. We could use our numbers to be able to take away from the Irish people. We're going to decimate them. We're going to go to war with the Irish group, take their money, take their resources, and crush you. I've gone too far.
Yeah. What if I came to the Hungarian group and was like, hey, I want to start a business and I need a grant. I know you guys give out grants. Can I have one?
No, because we help other Hungarian people. You're not Hungarian. So what I want you to do is start the Irish group, and your Irish people get together and help one another out and keep it all internal, push each other and help each other.
So do you think it makes people feel some kind of way depending on the size of the group? Like, for example, if you're like, hey, if you want to have an African-American business group, networking, whatever, okay, you have your Hungarian networking business group, whatever. But if someone's like, all right, here's the white business group, whatever, do you not think everybody would go, whoa, you can't do that. That sounds wrong. Does it not?
So it wouldn't make a lot of sense because there doesn't need to be a group. So the group of Hungarians got together. We were unrepresented. Mm-hmm. And if we didn't do anything, we didn't band together, we would never make it because we'd be dwarfed by the sizes of the other groups who are also doing the same thing. Right? So
unnecessary, maybe unnecessary, not needed. But is it wrong?
It would be a dick move more than anything else. I wouldn't be able to write on the wall to be able to achieve something that you already have, right? So yes, it could be done, and I wouldn't consider it racist. I would just think it would be unnecessary.
Yeah. Insensitive.
I wouldn't even call it insensitive. I would just say unnecessary. And the only reason you would want to do that, like the Hungarians would get together and say, we're at a huge disadvantage here. And if we don't bind together, we're going to get crushed just by the natural tendencies of the marketplace. Right. And then we see the product of that, which is we've got to then compete by banding together. A group of white people wouldn't really have, what would be their mission? To be dicks against other races. And because they're doing it, we're going to do it too. It wouldn't be the same mission statement.
I just thought of something.
What?
I'm kind of chuckling about. This is probably ridiculous, but I'm going to say it anyways.
Okay.
So we have things like Black entertainment television.
Yes.
You good with that?
Cool with that.
If you had to think and list out, if there was a network called White Entertainment Television,
right?
What shows would be on it?
No, I have no idea. Every stereotype you can imagine.
Girls?
Sure.
Full House.
But that's the argument. If all TV, if 90% of the TV caters to white people, then there's unnecessary to make a white network. It would just be a dick move.
Yeah.
But because you're not underrepresented in the marketplace, so it wouldn't really make sense. Now, if television, it would almost if we reverse this and use like if white people made a special NBA group, they're underrepresented NBA, so they band together and they accumulate power to balance out what's represented in the actual NBA. that would be something we validated because, mathematically you can measure that and say that would, make sense. But if there was a black group, that would make no sense.
Just this is All in the Family. Keep this going, guys. If there was a white entertainment television, what would be on it? All in the Family. Okay, so yeah, if we went to other parts of the world where maybe Caucasian people were the minority and they started a Caucasian networking support group.
That would make sense because that would be, what is your goal? If your goal is to dominate, right? That is to be supreme. And if you would like a certain nationality, ethnic group, gender to be supreme, that is racism, right? If you are trying to, on your own, compete or increase your weight against the other pressure, that is not supremacy, that is keeping up. And sometimes you have to get like minds together in order to compete. You can't do it on an individual basis.
So how do you feel about, let's say, a business that has Caucasian owners, moves into a rural area that is predominantly African American or any other race other than what the owners are? And they say, hey, I don't know if we can effectively serve this community because of how we look. We want to hire some people that look like the community. Is that DEI? Is that wrong? Or is that, hey, I could see why they would want to do that.
It's good business.
So where would you say the line gets drawn where it's, I can totally understand why we would want to hire someone that looks a certain way to represent the community that we are now in versus a DEI hire?
So DEI hire is basically inauthentically placing someone, right, because of a quota, that you have to do it rather than want to do it. So the best example, and I've looked at both sides of the pilot argument, okay, or even military argument. If you have a hire that you write out the job description and you're not getting the candidate that you want out of there because they're not hitting the requirements, it's when you inauthentically change the requirements so that that person fits into it, and then you get the hire that you want. Okay. And it's in the cases of college admissions and military recruitment. If they put a rule that says we're going to hire salespeople and we want it to be 50-50 split, and then you start hiring and you're not getting the 50-50 split, you have to include someone who wasn't fitting in there, right? And putting someone with less merit in a job because you needed them to hit your quota. That's the only DEI portion of it. Now, if DEI was, you could think of DEI policies that actually make sense. So let's just say there were pilots, but there weren't a whole lot of African-American pilots. And you want more African-American pilots. So you look through structures and say, what's excluding people to go through the training and become pilots? And then your DEI policy is to recruit more people in areas that were underserved, right? And bringing more qualified people. We just took the lazy route and somehow we came to the conclusion that we needed to take unmerited people and squeeze them in to meet our quota rather than just recruit and create more pilots that hit the diversity that we're looking for.
Okay, so if you're like, hey, this particular race in this industry is pretty low, might be a little underserved, let's go ahead and make a push to get some more people in that particular background trained in schooling for this, get them qualified and hire them rather than just, hey, it's low, you'll do.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
If they're not qualified, well, then change the job to make them qualified.
Exactly. And the biggest example was in college admissions, because the colleges that we were looking at were ones that there were only so many students that were accepted per year. Okay. Mm-hmm. Which means that if you had DEI policies in college admissions, that means it's not a matter of merited, right? It is who didn't get there because you had to hit a quota. So SAT scores, the admission resume of getting referrals in and whatnot, the merit of it means that this kid who worked his entire life to get a perfect 4.0, but they already had enough 4.0 people, but they didn't have enough racial minority groups. So we lowered the admission standards for one group so that they can have a seat, where this dude over here was like, I did absolutely nothing wrong. That was an unfairness to a merited person versus a DEI acceptance, because you can't just, the marketplace for them, it was a scarce resource, which is a chair at that university. You deprive that person because of this person.
So if you're in HR and you've got to hire someone,
yes,
and you have a lot of very qualified, good candidates, but you're told, yeah, but we need a certain race, and these qualified good ones are not that race. And you keep waiting and you keep waiting and you keep waiting because you've got to find someone of a certain race. Okay, if you eventually find someone of a certain race just as qualified as the rest, or not okay?
If it's being inflicted upon you where you're not picking that race, like if I was the business owner and I know that race is going into a certain neighborhood and would be more effective, so I chose the two equally qualified people, but the advantage was given to the person how I would be utilizing them, totally okay, because that was my choice. If somebody else was forcing me to pick the person that I don't agree with, that's not okay. That's discriminatory.
Yeah, because I've seen instances where that was the case.
Yeah, and that's why DEI policies force people to do things they wouldn't otherwise do. And it's taking the choice away from the person who ultimately has to carry the liability of having that person on their staff or part of that agency or in, coming out of their academic programs. And so that the control and telling other people what to do is more of what I disagree with. If I honestly, like if I take a hiring and I hire a woman for a position over a man when they were equally qualified because I think that she would do better in whatever, that's my choice. I'm at free will to put the person in it, because if it goes well, I get the rewards. If it doesn't go well, that's on me. So I have to do a smart thing in order to be successful at that. The man's going to be upset, no doubt, because he got picked and he was like, I got picked over by a woman. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you look at industries like TV and things of that nature. I mean, you can't tell me they're not hiring certain types of people if they're in front of a camera versus other people.
And I don't even really consider that an injustice. That if I ever got, I'm smarter than someone and a 6'4" guy got picked over me because how they would present and how they would be, taken into the marketplace, I'm going to be pissed off and mad that I'm not 6'4", right? But I'm going to pick something. I'm not going to force. I don't want to tell you that you have to hire me against your will. I'm just going to use what skill sets I do have and try to find placement on my own. I can either be mad and can't do anything about it, or I can try to control you and force you to do something you don't want to do.
I mean, yeah, you even kind of see that in like the modeling industry. We always talk about how models are twig thin and super skinny. I heard one time, I don't know if this is still true or not, I heard that the reason, at least back in the day, that was the case, is designers make a prototype, model, whatever, of a clothing item, something they have designed. And they make it small because that's what it is. It's an example. It's not the full thing yet. And models have to fit into that rather than clothes fit the model. So it's like, hey, these prototype, I don't know if you call it a prototype, if it's a clothing item or not, but we need somebody that can fit into this thing. And so you've got to be tiny. So to then say, sorry, I can't hire you to model because you are a size whatever, discriminating against or no?
Again, when it comes to business, you do whatever you want to do. If you want to make clothes that are a certain way, I mean, you're free to also open a modeling agency that does the opposite of that. And if it's as effective in whatever. So, I mean, it's same thing like with the minimum wage argument. Like, do you force everybody to pay what you think they should pay? Or do you just open your own restaurant and do the thing? And if it's successful, then it becomes the actual model. You have to prove the concept that is effective. If consumers don't like it, they won't buy from you, and you will be bad ideas are penalized out of the marketplace when it's a merit-based system.
So you think we should not have minimum wage?
No, not at all.
I'm just waiting for everyone to go, but no minimum wage.
No.
I can see the point of that. Because, I mean, if somebody's paying something that you don't want, then don't work there. Do you think, though, that we would have an abundance of businesses that are offering a wage people wouldn't want to work at? Would that
it would have to be coupled. The reason the minimum wage worked when it did is because companies consolidated and they had too much control. So if you had a town, you had one employer, right? They weren't competing against anyone. Okay. And everybody came out of high school, went and worked for that mill, so that you didn't really have any choices to move around and pick other things and whatever. You were going to the mill. So those people were like, hey, well, I could just lower the wage to nothing, and you're really not going to have a choice. There's nothing to fight against me. But if you have options where you could say, no, I'm not buying, I'm not working there, and you're going to work over there, then you're like, but I'll raise my, and the merit of it, if we allow companies to have so much oppressive power that they can set wages inauthentically low, right? Then, and take the choice away from the consumers or the employees, then you get exploitation. But and there are companies today exist that way, where they can depress wages and they can get together and all decide that they're not going to pay a certain way. And when that stuff starts happening, it's not like let's ruin an entire system for a simple deal, right? You go to the corporation, you stop that behavior from happening. You open up lots of opportunities for employees to choose and do things differently than they are. The system is broken. I'm not going to say that it's not, but a minimum wage doesn't work how you think it works.
Interesting. So this is sort of pivoting.
Yeah.
But it was something I was thinking of back when we were talking about sort of making that emotional appeal.
Yeah.
To things. Have you seen the billboard on South Avenue against Ruley?
No.
So there's a digital billboard, and it's a picture of Ruley, and it's his quote, "I would not show up to that pathetic display," whatever his thing was.
Okay.
How do you feel about that?
It's a public figure. He's got opposition. They can say whatever they want.
Yeah. Do you think it's effective?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, to a point. To a point. I think, especially in our area, there are a lot of neutral voters that really don't care one way or the other. And that kind of advertising will make you feel differently about someone because there isn't a pushback on it, where Ruley doesn't really care that it even exists. But Ruley would have to then run his own marketing to cast himself in a certain light. And so like, it's a little bit effective. I know I said it's not, but it's a little bit effective for those neutral voters.
Yeah. My thing is I just, when I saw that, my first reaction was, this is another example of making everything emotional. Like, do you have anything of substance that doesn't require someone to be emotional about it? That can say, oh yeah, that's a good idea. That's a bad idea. That's helpful. That's not. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe if now I'm just sort of hypersensitive to it. But when I saw that, I was like, you might reach us. I feel like with that, you're only reaching the people that are going to be with you anyways. You're reaching the emotional people that are going to vote for you because they're emotional people anyways.
But that their base gets drummed up when I mean, you've seen all the OWN videos, right? The OWN. I owned him. The Ben Shapiro's and the Charlie Kirks and whatever, going to college campuses, owned them, right?
Yeah.
And so we're addicted to the owning in this tribal conflict that we have. So, but the problem is, like, I always caution politicians that whatever warfare you pick is the warfare that's going to be used against you. So if you can't see really benefiting from it being used against you, you should time out.
Because when I saw that quote from him, I was like, oh, that's gonna come back. Gloves
off, right?
I was like, hope you know what
the reasonable people are sitting back and saying this is going to get really ugly, really dirty. If you want to play this game and you take the gloves off, you cannot be outraged or clutch your pearls when the gloves come off on the other side. You keep those damn gloves on if you want to be, have a little bit of truce in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that was sort of you handed them that one.
That's exactly right. But
like, that's exactly what they're going to go off of now. And they did, which to an extent could be like, well, obviously they will. But I guess I think, okay, well, all this is showing me is you were handed something and you used it because you didn't actually have anything else.
The public is going to eat this up. It is going to be extremely effective, and it's going to ratchet up the polarized community that we already have. But you have to always remember, like, the first time, right? If you did it, if somebody went and let's just say there was a rule that was getting in your way that allowed you just to talk and put all the legislators on idle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, man, that's really getting in our way. You got to think about that for a moment and say, all right, this is getting in my way, and I'm going to get rid of that. But in the future, the roles might be reversed, and that rule might benefit me one day. Do I want to get rid of it now because it's going to benefit me, only to complain about it later when it's at my detriment? Because the public's going to be like, no, dude, I heard what you said, right? The first time, and you feel differently only because now you're not a beneficiary of it.
Yeah. Julie says, what is wrong with emotions, Kelin? People's actions evoke emotion, justifiable. Yes, absolutely nothing wrong with emotions. Advertisers use emotions. Movie producers use emotions. I'm an emotional person affected by emotions. It can work. It has a place. But
let's talk about that place, because I love this topic.
Talk about that place. My point with this is, if that is your one and only card that you play, and you're fighting against an opposition that is pointing that out and is accusing you of only having one hand. You're a one-trick pony. You play on people's emotions. That's all you do. And they're shining a spotlight on that. And it's now becoming ineffective to the point of everybody that saw a woman be a hateful human being on a playground, and now they somehow defend her. When do you think then, crap, we may need something other than an emotional play?
All right. I don't think emotions should ever be used to decide things. Okay. So you have two things. You have logic and you have emotion, and both of them work hand in hand. Logic is your map and your guidance and your formulations and your plan. Mm-hmm. And emotions are your fuel, the energy that makes the plan happen. So if you reverse them and you're an emotional decider, you are going to be freaking wrong a lot of the time and miserable. When is the last time that you acted out of emotion, right? And you felt good about the result of where that emotion led you? Almost never. You always feel good about the expression of the emotion,
okay,
not that it was effective. So if you want effectiveness, then you use emotion for fuel, not for direction.
For fuel, not for direction.
Yes. There's nothing wrong with emotions. You said it in the beginning, it's when it's misused and used for the wrong thing, that's when it always goes haywire.
So if you present somebody with something in an emotional way, it causes them to act, to go maybe help someone, and you're like, hey, that is a good output of the emotional response you had. But if you emotionally affect someone over something that's maybe not even true.
Well, it's the deciding part, right? You can use emotion to fuel, but to decide. Yeah. So if you use that same example of charitable giving, right? Uh-huh. So you want to just do dumb things and give people money because of the emotional expression. If you sat down and I was like, hey, before you go do this, I want you to jot down how to make this go really well. Put some strategy to it. Who you're going to pick, how much is it going to be, and whatever. After you put your guidelines, then you re-emotionalize the structure and the foundation of charitable giving. Now you get both. You get to feel good about the charitable giving, and it gets to go well. If you didn't have the structure of logic, then all you did was had the dopamine that you get from the expression, and then when you analyze it, you're going to come to the conclusion almost every time, unless you accidentally get lucky, that it didn't go quite as well as it could have if you would have structured it in logic. And that's what we do on our discussions here, is we break them down in their logical components. So if we're like racism, and then the first branch is, let's talk logically about what racism is, what's the word, what's the components, what's the metrics, whatever. And then you got the emotional reaction from it, and you can actually give a lot of your structure what to do with it once you've been emotionalized into action.
Yeah, because if you just have the emotion and you go off on about something that wasn't racism, you're now hurting whatever.
You didn't make anything better. At the end of the day, you just made things worse. Unless you get lucky. And I've gotten lucky on emotional, things where even though I didn't plan something to happen, like you're at the park, right? And your kid's playing on the slide and a little kid comes over and pushes your kid into the dirt, right? You're either going to be guided by what should I do logically, where, just like we expected the blonde lady to do, is what is the best course of action? I'm going to find the parent and I'm going to go over to the parent and say, could you please have your kid, not me? All logical, right?
Maybe take your stuff and move to a different area.
Yes. If it passed through the logic filter, you'd come to a good conclusion and it would go right. If you emotionally just responded and picked that other kid up and threw them out of the playground, that would have been an emotional expression. And at the end of the day, you'd be like, all right, I know why I emotionally responded to that, but I did all of the wrong things because I was completely guided by what my emotions did to me and for me.
Yeah. And again, I still kind of see this billboard as a bad example of how you use emotion. Again, like I don't really have any strong feelings towards Ruley himself. I don't know him. I don't know much about him. All I know is this drama between when Waltz came to town and Ruley obviously wasn't going to show up because that wouldn't probably go well for him. And he made that statement. And as soon as he called it pathetic, everybody knew they're going to run on that. You just gave them some fuel.
Sure.
That's all I got from this. So again, even if they would have said, oh gosh, what might have been a better example? If you agree with Ruley and you like Ruley, you're not hurt by that billboard because you do probably think their show was pathetic. So it doesn't help them. If you maybe like me or a little, I'm middle ground, I don't feel strongly either way, I again see it as he handed you something and you used it, so it shows me you've got nothing else. Like if you,
well, you'd expect, but the emotional response to that is if you don't feel any way about Ruley, but you see him making a comment that was kind of crass, right?
Yeah.
Then you're like, oh, I don't know this Ruley, but he sounds like a big jerk. The emotional, you wouldn't put it through the logical filter of, oh, they put that up there. They must not have had anything else. You and I might do that, but the neutral voter are more emotional than you give them credit for. Sorry.
So they're advertising to the more emotional, don't stop and think about this kind of person.
Yes, exactly. And it's relatively effective. Okay. All right, let's switch gears again because I want to talk about Pope Trump.
Pope Trump.
Okay. Over the weekend, the official White House, I think it was the White House X account, had a picture of Trump with the Pope's outfit on. This is coming from official
The White House put that out?
I am pretty sure.
Oh my Lord.
I am pretty. Let me just verify that.
My Lord.
Assuming that's true, what do you think about another troll using the official White House account? And
you think like they were hacked? Like the White House people didn't post that?
No, they did post.
They did.
Let me verify because maybe it was just his. I'm gonna find it.
Why would? Is that a joke?
It wasn't the White House. It was just Trump's account.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
So Trump was trolling people and saying
that he was going to be elected. Trump. Okay, and you could imagine how upset certain people were.
Yeah.
And how like minimizing other people were. So your thought now, number one, it was weird to see Democrats support the Catholic Church this weekend. I'm just going to say that first off. They were very wholly religious this weekend, which was odd. And
not odd because they'll do anything against Trump.
Because
but
the Catholic Church is a sacred institution that shall not be mocked. Not even at the Olympics when the Last Supper is mocked. We don't do that because it is really sacred. Thoughts?
Well, I see this number one as the similar example to Ruley. He just threw something out there that you've got to know is going to just get cause mayhem. This is going to rile people up. You're stirring the pot. This is something that is so clearly meant to instigate.
For sure. 100%.
So part of me is like, is he bored? Was he like, hey, there's not enough backlash. I better give the media something to do. Like, why would he think that's a good idea? And then my brain says, what does he want to distract us from then?
Oh, no. And we called this early on, that the part of the media control from this administration is on a consecutive basis. Throw something out there to get their headlines on something that doesn't absolutely matter. So the things they're trying to get done, right? They don't have time to try to sabotage those things.
Like, is this another, like we said, possibly Gulf of America was, is this another throw goldfish crackers 100%. On the floor for the toddlers?
There is probably a storyboard that has a bunch of these lined up that once it trails off the headlines, the next troll is handed out there. There's never any hell to pay because the people hate him, are going to hate him anyway.
Yeah.
And the people who know that he's going to do this just like, that's Mr. Trump.
Yeah. Because I feel like if you're MAGA, you can do no wrong.
No.
It doesn't matter what he does, you're going to support him. And if you're more liberal, you're going to hate everything he does. And so this just fuels your hate fire. And so there's got to be a reason somewhere in the middle. Either I'm really bored, let me go ahead and instigate some fighting. But again, why? What is he?
I don't think it's nefarious. Like I said, I think it doesn't matter what the other stuff they're doing. If they're working on DOGE or they're working on the tariffs, if they're working on international affairs. And if the media wasn't distracted, all they would do is try to obstruct what's happening in the legitimate departments of what they're trying to happen. So they just have a never-ending distraction. It's like the 2-year-old is going to be up in my business unless I give them the iPad. Well, the iPad is crazy stuff you put on X that keeps them in the living room paying attention to Pope Trump rather than effing with the stuff that I'm working on.
Maybe he was like, look, if I'm going to catch flack for something that isn't true, aka I'm disrespectful because I wore a blue suit to the funeral, then I might as well give them something that they can actually be mad about.
And it's pretty smart. It really is.
Yeah.
From a strategical standpoint, it's a pretty, because the thing is, even if I told the media that's what he's doing, they would not be able to pass on the temptation to take a bite out of something salacious and something as meaty as that. All I got to do is have a bunch of meaty stuff, and he can concoct some meat sandwiches for these guys forever.
Yeah. And I think his exact game plan is to appeal to the Julies of the world, who says, just another example of Trump's narcissism. I am the chosen one. He checks all the boxes of a narcissist.
100%.
Which again, does he though? Does he?
So here's, and let me give all the Democrats the cheat code for this.
Okay.
Don't pay any attention to his antics, and he'll stop doing them. If you could not take the bait and just pretend like he didn't even do it, if you get riled up and there is headlines and you get mad, you gave him exactly what he was asking for.
Yeah, which is why I would think this was on purpose for that reason. So what is he about to do? Like, it would be really interesting to see over the next couple of days what happens, what he changes, what he does while they were calling him a narcissist and fighting about being Pope Trump and all of that. It's so silly that it's got to be something like, I got to throw something silly out there.
See, that's the only part of this that I disagree with you. I think this is a force field that needs to be on all the time. So look at the regiment. If you took a timeline, you could, I bet you that you could put a number of days until the next troll happens and make it so it's not specifically tied to a thing that he's going to do, which might be the case, but we're going to pay attention to it and see if like every 7 days something comes out that is Pope Trump-ish, right? To see if it's cover fire that's just all the time.
Trying to think of any other reason he would do this. And again, I still think that a lot of what Trump does is because we, meaning people who don't like him, are gonna find any reason to push back. You know, we don't like him and he went to the Pope's funeral, so he made a big deal about his suit. And when that was unfounded, oh, he was sleeping. And if that's unfounded, oh, now he's disrespectful and he's like, it's like I could see him just being like, hey, I'm feeling saucy today. I'm going to go kick the beehive and rile up some liberals or something.
Okay, so did you read Art of War? Have you ever looked at the summary of this? Okay, so if you want to know what Trump is going to do through the administration, if you just print out the summary, the bullet points of all of the war strategy in the Art of War, the popular ones, the ones that kind of everybody knows, and almost everything that he does, you could tie back to one of those bullet points because he is facing down the media, the Democrats, his opposition as an adversary, like an army general would in the Art of War. So it's one of those things where he's going to be predictable because these are not strategies that he invented. He's just looking at the wisdom of how you defeat an enemy and using them out of, military wisdom.
So is this kind of like if you're entering a debate with someone, you know what they're going to call 100%. Out about you, so you call it out first.
Could be.
He could be like, hey, I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that, so that you have nothing now. I already addressed
that. Would be a very usable strategy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, Julie says, why would a grown man, a man that is the most powerful in the world that wants to piss off people all the time?
Why would he want to?
Is that why would a grown man want to all the time? Maybe
because I will tell you this, Democrats' outrage are their weakness.
Yeah.
Because they can be controlled by their outrage. So I would piss them off to get them in their worst state where they do unreasonable and irrational things. I say all the time that Trump's adversaries are his best friend. They make all the mistakes that he wants them to. So he's controlling their responses and reactions.
He is the epitome of like, you ever tell your kids growing up, just ignore them. Don't give them what they want. They're being mean because they want a reaction from you. Like that's Trump.
Yeah.
Trump wants your reaction and he gets it every time.
And so the things that aren't effective are the things that you're attacking him on. So what Julie's going to say next is that that's immature behavior, not befitting a president. So that's okay. So if you say those two things, you've convinced zero people of anything different than they already believe. When there are actual attributes of Trump that if you attacked would be effective at eroding his support from other people. But if he can make you mad at being immature, and then he makes you say he's immature, and then you say it, and it does nothing, you're right where he wants you to be.
And even though he brings back religion to the White House, supposedly, and does these prayer dinners and brought a national day of whatever, I've seen a couple different headlines of religious-based, prayer-based, godly things that he does and has brought back that were gone. That's all glazed over. He must be disrespectful because look at this post. And like Carter says, Trump could cure cancer and that would piss off the Democrats.
He's got you right where he wants you.
It is so clear. And I feel like even Julie has got to admit there is nothing he can do that and I'm not saying Julie personally, but a lot of those extremely left people will give him credit for. Nothing. He can't do anything without getting criticized or without them putting a spin on it. So
and in the Art of War, that is your advantage, your strategic advantage of when you know what makes your opposition tick and you manipulate the crap out of what you know they will do and use it to control them. He is going by the book, what a military strategist to defeat you. And all you have to do is not take the bait. Even though you want to, even though it's easy, even though you feel justified, don't do it, and his strategy crumbles.
So again, if Ruley calls a Democratic event pathetic and they jump on that, do you think he could be like,
I don't know.
You're going to jump on
I don't think that that really ran that, like he didn't say those things as part of an overall plan.
You think it was just a heated moment?
What he felt and what he thought, and that's what he said. And so I don't think that there's a master plan when it comes to the
So you think
thing.
Trump then, in comparison, is a little more calculated?
Yes. Yeah. He has far more sergeants and people around him advising him what to do, and they're all in the same playbook of how to get through this presidency when could be so much destructive opposition. They're controlling what the opposition. So if you're going to take fire, you're going to take the fire that you can handle, not the ones that are going to sink your ship. And that's all he's doing, is he's tempting the fire that he can handle in, and he can bait him in every time. It's
kind of like, I can't believe I'm making a football reference because I don't know anything about football, but it's almost like these are his blockers. Like they want to get things done quickly. They call it Trump speed. We get things done at Trump speed.
Yeah.
So to keep moving quickly and maybe not getting a lot of backlash over something effective that they're truly trying to do, maybe this is when they're like, all right, throw this out, deflect, throw this out, deflect, so we can kind of keep focus on what's important here.
But the best football plays are when you use the defense's disadvantage or advantage against them by baiting them. They'll do trickery, right? Just to like make you think one thing is going to happen, so you overinvest in that thing, and what actually happens, they were at a disadvantage, and they can like run a free play because you bought into it so wholly. Like if they, for instance, like if you're on the 1 yard line, right, and they're thinking they're going to run right up the middle, and then so you bring all of your offensive line and you like really fake them out that you're running, but really you're going to run to the right. You only put like one guy who's in the play. So the defense bites on it, and I think they put all of their guys to defend. So that one little guy who, if you just ran a regular play, there's no way that guy would have been as open as he was. But because they bought into what they thought you were going to do, and that guy just waltzes right into the end zone. It's basic shit. It really is.
Julie says, I never want a president to fail ever. He blew that in 2016. Do you, though, think there are people that are like, I would rather see him fail and the country go to hell in a handbasket?
Secretly, you can't deny. Like maybe fail is an overall, like be successful. But if you paint down what it means to be successful, he's going to fail by your standards because he's going to do the different thing, right?
Yeah.
But when you didn't vote for a person or when they're not your favorite, you're secretly hoping whatever they're working on doesn't go great, so you can say the thing that you want to. So in that way, publicly you will say, "I hope he does not fail," because that sounds more virtuous and more whatever. But you're not really thinking that inside. You're a human being.
You really do.
You're a human being, and if there's a little wound, you're going to stick your finger in it, and you're going to make them feel a little bit of pain because that would be just.
Yeah, like, do you think there are people that feel a little vindicated when Biden really took a turn for the worse, and it was clear he's not all there, and it was clear that he's not the good choice? Do you think people that have all along hated Biden were like, yes, finally?
100%. That's human. That is human nature.
Yeah.
That's human nature to capitalize on the weakness of your opponent. And at least, the difference between the Republican strategy and the Democrat strategy, and I watched this interview this weekend that really, I don't know if it was on CBS or one of the weekend shows where Trump was talking to that female reporter. And you pointed this out a number of months ago, where I will say a thing like, and this in case it was, this administration wants to cut Medicaid. And so how do you respond to all of the Medicaid recipients fearing that your cuts in Medicaid are going to affect them? No Medicaid payments were cut. We don't have any intention of cutting any Medicaid. Yeah, but you're going to cut Medicaid. So I just told you that I'm not going to cut Medicaid. But 3 or 4 times you insisted that I was going to cut Medicaid, even though I just freaking told you. So the narrative is, once you have it in your brain that something's going to happen, in spite of all evidence that it's not happening, you will stick to the illusion rather than what's actually happening. I think the Republicans are more, they don't want to really talk about those things. The Democrats want to weave untrue statements forever, even if they turn out not to be true.
Yeah. And then inevitably what you see happen then is Trump say something very insulting, very off color to the person doing it. And that's the clip you see. What a jerk. What a narcissist. What an a-hole. Look how disrespectful he is. And it's like, did you see what this reporter was saying up to that point? If I were telling someone, I didn't say that, I'm not doing that, that's not true. Yeah, but what about when you do it? I didn't do it. Yeah, but what are you going to say to the people when you want to, because you want to do that? I just said I don't want to do that. At what point do I'm like, you're an a-hole and this interview is over? Like, you're trying to bait me.
Okay. It's freaking gaslighting. The only real gaslighting that has happened in the last 6 months, and that's it.
The media are a bunch of gaslighters.
Gaslighters,
100%.
all of them.
Yes.
So they honestly, there were a couple of people in Democrat circles that actually had the right idea, the art of war strategy against Trump. They used it for about 19 seconds and then they bailed on it. And I thought that's what Trump needs. Trump needs an adversary that's playing the same game against him as he plays with other people. Mm-hmm. And here it is. And it was, you'll know what I'm talking about. So they put in the headlines for about a couple days, maybe a week, that Elon was the real president. Okay. Because Trump's weakness is his ego. Right. And if you kind of put the seed in that he wasn't really president, the smart guy was president, right?
Yeah.
Then his ego would get the best of him. He'd start making bad choices. He'd then have to like fire Elon. Like there would have been a whole set of dominoes. And if they would have kept on that and played up, but the problem was then they flipped it and they went the other direction. Then they tried to do a wedge issue between and say, well, there's spats between Elon and Trump, but they bailed on the ego one would have worked way better than the wedge issue between the two, but they couldn't stick to the strategy long enough to actually get its effectiveness. Because if you want that administration to crumble, right, you make Trump be third in line instead of first in line, and you will own that administration.
Yeah, I feel like they tried to do that with, did you hear the supposed audio that was JD Vance's voice bashing Elon?
Yes.
And he's not important. I'm the important
Yes.
one. And everyone's like, they're turning on each other.
That is the proper play. If they could stick to it long enough for it to work, that is the way to play the Trump administration against them. And, you know, if I'm in a strategy session in the Trump administration, I have a whole whiteboard dedicated to the things they're going to try and how we're going to respond to it. So I would not be surprised if that wouldn't have been effective because they already have planning engagements.
And the only reason I think too that that might not work is I think Trump and the people around him as well do this too. I think he can turn it around as, I'm so good at what I do, I put really smart people in places. You know, I hired Elon and I hired Kennedy and I got Tulsi and all those people have said multiple times that in a private setting, in a meeting with Trump, he is very open to new ideas. He wants to know everyone's opinion. He wants to know how you feel about something. And he gets a lot of information from smart people and considers it all. And he's very open-minded. I could see Trump in any way spinning it rather than just letting everyone go so he looks like the one in charge. I could see him saying, yeah, he is really good. He's doing a lot because I gave him that. I put him there. He's my hire, you know?
All right, so we did the 100 human beings against the gorilla thing, and we basically talked through how to kill the gorilla. So let's say we have Trump is now the gorilla, and we have to pick out what, like we basically said the gorilla had really thick skin, so we don't want to waste our time trying to pick at the gorilla's skin because we're not going to be effective. Mm-hmm. So and we're going to call him the mud monster because Trump is a mud monster. He is built completely of mud. So when you throw mud at a mud monster, right, what does it become?
A bigger mud monster.
A bigger mud monster. You didn't hurt the mud monster by giving him the thing that he's really made of, right?
Yeah.
So if the Democrats really sat back and said, okay, we got to fight we're 100 Democrats versus the mud monster. How are we going to take this thing down? What's the Trump weakness that if we get to him, we can manipulate him and we can own him? Because it'll be none of the things that they're actually attacking him on.
It can't be more mud.
Can't be more mud.
Gotta stop the mud.
Got to stop them. We can't do any more mud. So trying to destroy him on being a moral, virtue, honest, whatever person, nobody believes he's that. So making another charge against him as being that is ineffective. So I think his weakness is Bill Maher. Bill Maher had a sit down with Trump and said, oh, he's a pretty reasonable, rational guy. And I think his outward theatrics and personality attracts the mud, right? But he's a softy when mud's not being thrown after him. I think that's when the gorilla takes his thick skin off, right? Mm-hmm. And he's susceptible to injury when he's likable Trump rather than mud monster Trump. If I were to guess. So be nice to Trump means that he drops the guard and takes off the skin, and he's susceptible to injury if you're nice to him. But if you're nice to him, you feed his ego, and that's ego. Yeah. Trump is a different monster. So you got to be careful in this play.
Yeah, Carter says they threw everything at Trump and it got him elected.
Mud monster.
To me, and one of the phrases you keep hearing the right say is bring back common sense, make things make sense again. I think because the emotional appeal is getting so overplayed, they've got to find things that do actually, like, you got to admit, Republicans do things and then show you how it would make sense. You may not agree with it. You may not want it to happen, but you can see the point behind it. If you really hate Trump and you're super far left, you're not even going to consider the evidence. But rational thinking people will be like, that does make kind of sense. I could see why they would think that could be helpful. I could see that going in a direction like that. I feel like the Dems are going to have to bring back some of that, which might be hard to do if they just want to do things that don't make sense. Yeah, I don't know.
Let's see. We're losing lead scientists to other countries because felon Trump cut funding. This has major consequences. Well, the scientists we're losing. I'm okay with losing.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of science. I am not a fan of the science. And science was captured. We still have the best marketplace with the most innovations. And so if we lead to data-oriented sciences where they come up with the conclusion before they, dig into the innovation, I'm okay losing those.
There's a lot of cuts that have been done that the left want to say are harmful cuts. And that, I'm sorry, that's not the case in everything we're cutting. Could it be in some of the cuts? Sure, could be. But I think that's another emotional appeal is look at all these things that got cut. How terrible. Well, yeah, let's look at what was cut and you'll see it's not terrible.
Yeah.
That those were things we needed to leave or lose and maybe they needed to go. So to
That's
say
right.
We're losing lead scientists, here's where the boy that cried wolf one too many times. I'm now skeptical. Are they actual good scientists or were they biased? Were they in the pocket of someone? Were they making reports that pushed the agenda they wanted to push?
So Twitter had, we'll say 2,000 people when Elon Musk took over and he fired 80% of them. So you could have very easily say he lost those engineers, right?
Yeah.
And it feels like, how can you run a business if 80% of your engineers are now unemployed? And then X became better, ran more efficiently, and those engineers went somewhere else. And have you noticed the loss of engineers at X? Did you feel any repercussions from it? So it's going to feel the same way, where if we can shed out the people who are ineffective, weren't doing a good job, doing terrible the science, I think science will always attract better minds than when academia stalked them with in the first place. So.
My husband and I, we were driving around over the weekend. We saw a building that had a big sign that said something about cuts to veterans aren't helpful or they're cutting veteran benefits or something. My husband's a veteran. He's like, I've not lost a single benefit, not one. But what is being cut is unnecessary positions through the VA.
Yep.
And I'll tell you all day long on another show when we have time how necessary that is.
All right.
For sure.
Let's wrap it up on that. Thanks everybody for joining us. I appreciate it.
You.
MLO Bros will be back tomorrow with their show. Have a great day.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this show on Youngstown Studio. This is original Youngstown content. Feel free to share our videos and tell your friends about us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube